Okay, I am resting now, meaning the cat is fed and she's calm and she's laying down next to me. Um, so I wanted to talk about something that I recently um, saw, and I'm thankful for seeing it on one of the dark forest spaces. Why did I say it like that? Dark forest. Anyway, something that's kind of been I don't know if it's called on my spirit or my heart or I don't care. I think I was just thinking about it as I was doing my morning meditations about part of a snippet of a conversation around community and the uh, co-option of community, the word community, as this more superficial term that's been, uh, I'll say, circulating around in content spaces. And I've been tracking it too. I've been tracking all of the words. I find it to be fascinating. And it talks about essentially our social language as a species, right? Um, the way that words are created and morphed from their origin is the history of language itself. I mean, speaking English essentially is speaking multiple languages at the same time. So it makes sense that words would be morphed and changed in their meaning depending on the context. And I think that there's this particular tension that exists between those who have been in one arena of community and those who might be entering it from a different aspect of community. And something that I was thinking about earlier is I'm like, what is this real tension? What is this real tension? What is this? So I was just like, let me pull something from one of my favorite oracles. It's called the Tell Me You Love Me Oracle. It's like beautiful artwork. And the card that I pulled, interestingly enough, I'm going to cover her tetas, um, was sacrifice, letting go, devotion. I'll read a little bit of it, um, which shocked me. Stop believing that you are not doing things well enough to deserve love. The unpleasantness of your situation is not of your making. Whatever the case, if you don't demand respect for your personal values of commitment and your expectations in a relationship, you run the risk of wasting your time and getting hurt. And I'm like, what the hell does that have to do with anything that I just was thinking about? But I really sat with the image because I'm like, she got her whole chesticles out, right? And then the interesting part of this image is that she's putting a dagger in her own heart. And I think that there's this. I pulled an extra card. It's like for this shadow work healing called Illusions. And I said, excuse me? I am not under any illusion. Then I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I have to check myself. Because what happens in these spaces with words, getting back to that point, is sometimes we might hurt our own feelings. There's this song, this Baltimore club song called Pork Chops and Onion Gravy. And there's a line in it that is slipped down on a banana peel and hurt my own damn feelings. And it kept repeating in my head. And I'm like, why? And then when I pulled the oracle, I was like, oh, right. Because you're hurting your own feelings when you think that everybody has to abide by the same definition as you. No one has a monopoly on particular words. And also, as I'm sure many has heard the popular term, evil is a matter of perspective. Everything actually extends to that. Everything is a matter of perspective. What things actually are and the meaning that we create from them are worlds that we actually can't access. We don't know things as they are, we know them as we are. And so I understood where the conversation was going based off of the values that dark forest possesses. I just want to say DF because I don't know why my, you know what it is? I have the whole Barbara Walters voice going on to help people and also help me work through my impatience of hearing people say, "Oh my gosh, you have a New York accent," and I'm like, um, and also it's just fast if I just say DFOS or DF. I don't know. Anyway, that is an insignificant point. I think the actual point is because of the values that the system creates, that the environment or the ecosystem creates, you then attract inhabitants, primary inhabitants that, or I'll say, the majority of the inhabitants of that particular ecosystem will be compatible with it. And once that compatibility, that first wave of compatibility happens, then what also happens in the ecosystem is you have particular aspects of variety. Is something that I noticed, and I'm so thankful to the fact that we have gardens all around the city, but the New York Botanical Garden, and there's a particular pocket which I actually named my company after called Edge Environments, which are ecotones. But one of the things about it is that even within these different communities, within that particular ecosystem, they may interact with each other based off of the shared value of the ecosystem, or they might not. Some are even at the border, which is the point of the edge environment, to be at the edge of the particular environments in which is contained by that ecosystem, or is contained within the ecosystem. And some might clash, right? I think about the time where, like, my own lived experience as a community manager, I was working on this pilot program with Idealist in multiple cities. And somehow, magically, they picked the Bronx as one of their cities. And also, we were the only one that had two community managers. And I thought that was rather interesting. And it spoke to how Idealists seem like they actually knew the Bronx, because it's kind of like how people think of Kentucky as four different states. The Bronx is essentially like four different boroughs. So I think it was very interesting that, like, say for instance, I was a South Bronx community manager, or I live in the South Bronx. And then there was a community manager that lived in the North Bronx. But we were to collaborate on many different projects. Eventually, the community manager that I was working with within my area had to roll off of the project. But, it came to me at an interesting point in my life. I was recently out of Peace Corps in Zambia as a community health extension volunteer, and then I worked uh, in one region of Zambia for a maternal health project for 2 years. Um, so it's just having a wide range of experience, speaking to people, overcoming miscommunication, sometimes just letting disagreements be what they were, right? There were people coming at maternal health from different perspectives based off of both their own lived experience and their levels of expertise, whether that was through lived experience or through professional skills, sometimes both, right? Um, and translating that very lightly into the community manager work that I was doing in the Bronx now. I was rediscovering my borough through that. And so in many ways, I was able to like apply a beginner's mind to my community management, to assume that I knew absolutely nothing about the area that I was born and raised in. But because I had already been away for so long in such a different context for about 3 years, right? That'll change your perspective on a lot of different things. So, it meant recognizing that there are many communities, and we might associate those with geography. We might associate those with social status. We might associate those with lived personal experience based off of whatever human condition they have. Um, but they're all values too, right? So then we have to qualify what we mean by values. We have to qualify what we mean by our particular visions, how we imagine the world, and what we imagine it to be, based off of our own goals, our own needs, our own wants, desires, um, our own traumas. And there's one experience that spoke to me this morning when I was thinking about even just putting on my boots, volunteering with an organization, and then asking for permission to interview that particular community organizer. Because even though she's only like a few blocks away from me, we're in we're in overlapping communities, but we're also in very different communities. We also have very different lived experiences, and we have very different points of view. So for us to be able to meet in the middle by our own shared interaction, her inviting me into her garden and me saying, hey, understanding that we share the value of contribution, let me pull my boots up and get in this dirty ass New York City soil and help you clear this garden. Help you when most people don't want to do weed work. They want to, put the little plants in the garden and everything's already set up and beautiful. But I'm just like, I want to show you in this moment that we share these values. And then her being able to speak with me showed me that she shares my values as well. And it was a quietly reciprocal relationship that we were building. And it relied upon our intuition about what it means to be human, and figuring that out, knowing that nothing is perfect. And so I feel like we live by our ideals sometimes, and then whatever falls away is the reality of the situation. There have been times where I've had to face disagreement with people, um, or with what I thought were my own goals, but then I had to think about more long term or higher level goals. Like there was an artist, unbeknownst to me, was having an issue at this very popular art studio in my community. And right before I was about to run this beautiful piece, I took all these pictures and I spent the whole day in the studio. It was just she had just she was just a lively spirit anyway, and a wonderful person, very interesting artwork. And she was very welcoming and open, but I didn't know about the conflict she was experiencing within her work environment. And so I respected her wishes to rescind that piece, because it's about that feeling of like feeling supported, feeling heard. And if I was just going to run the piece just to do it, like that also meant that I wasn't hearing myself, like I was dismissing myself. Like, oh, it doesn't matter. That's what I'm telling myself. So, I think for her own particular safety in that environment, not necessarily physically, but I mean, that could be a part of it too. If we're thinking about economics, which is everything in New York. But there's always going to be this tension. When I was working at, I'm laughing in my head because someone recently told me, "What haven't you done?" But when I was working at Open Society Foundations, one of our principals, of course, for the Open Society was Karl Popper, and so it was aligned with the concept of pluralism, which is, people being able to maintain their own cultural and demographic values while still existing cooperatively in society. And so when I Googled, for modern examples, Google gave me Los Angeles, and I thought that was really funny. Um, I'm like, what? But I think that's important. I think that maybe there are particular opportunities for us to have like secondary level questions to dig deeper on what we mean by these particular value systems, and maybe even engage in some of these conversations that might be fruitful. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. I There are many situations where I've had experiences and then I look back on them, I'm like, oh, what was the purpose of that experience? Because did I work for the devil? And it's like, no, is just developing a different level to your values. It's not just making a difference. It's understanding, particular mechanisms for making a difference. And so sometimes there might be people who are stumbling upon particular concepts and they're forming their definition based off of what they're learning and the path of learning, right? Versus being introduced in a particular way. I know I was introduced to it through social impact, social causes, activism, community development. And so my lens, I know that my lens is automatically defaulted to many different definitions of community under those particular systems. I also understand, after watching a lot and just being a part of a lot of different creator events, understanding how they're using community and what it ties to. I think there are some interesting learning opportunities for both. Say, for instance, if community for a content creator, and I've been a part of some of these communities too for my own research. Um, I've been doing self funded research for years. Somebody fund me. Um, but one of the things I noticed around these creator communities, not all of them, right? I haven't been a part of all of them, but the ones that I've actually been a part of more behind the scenes than following them on like social media, is how dedicated they are to their own values and their philosophies, and how consistent that actually is with their public facing personas. So when I've been a part of some of these communities, they have centered around the values that they've already talked about within their own work. But what they're trying to do is, based off of their own values, invite you into that particular ecosystem if you are aligned. Now, how you are aligned is also up to you, because there was one there was one community I was a part of. I can tune in and out of certain frequencies. Sometimes I tune into frequencies. I'm like, how the hell did I get here? But just noticing a pattern, because this one content creator is really popular and he has this particular persona that attracts people who almost, yeah, I'm just going to admit it, they almost deify him. And I don't want to put that value on the creator or, subject people to that. But in terms of the language that they used, you know, it seemed like there was a particular tension in his community with wanting to share his philosophy, and also, and some people were like sharing his philosophy to be applied to content creation, and there were people who participated. I was one of the participants in one of the courses, and it was very useful, like practically useful. And for a lot of people, we were creating templates and doing different models, expressing his original model in different ways. And so I was mostly a part of that. But there were also other people who were like, oh man, I saw your latest video, and, and just really hyping him up. And I'm like, at first, I was like, mm, chill out. But then I'm like, who am I to tell somebody to chill out? Like, in many ways, maybe that's their particular role. I shouldn't laugh because it's so different from how I am. Like, I was like, I'm working on this piece about like King Lear reimagined, which is like every other like King Lear reimagined piece. But I'm like, what if Cordelia survived for real, for real? I feel like Cordelia sometimes, where I'm just like, I will tell you about yourself, no more, no less. And I also recognize that you're a human, so there's no need for me to tell you anything other than how I'm experiencing you or how I perceive you in that moment. But please do understand that still doesn't create any value system for you. It's inside of you. How I experience you is just how I experience you. So then I had to apply that to how these other people might think. Where I'm just like, who am I to judge how they experience him? you know? And maybe that's what they need at that moment. Like, I don't need that. It goes back to ecosystems. Like, a turtle is going to be like, I actually, it's like, here's a slug. And actually, no, that's not a good example. My turtle eats everything. So, what's a really good example? Any animal trying to eat something that it actually does not need to eat because it's not a part of its like diet or dietary need at the moment. And maybe sometimes that's what people need. They need to bounce that energy off of someone until they might not ever, but until they express that within themselves. Because if they're able to see that in him, that means they are able to recognize that something about his character, those characteristics that person possesses, is resonant within themselves. Just like something about what repelled me and how they were interacting with them resonated within me, just in a different way. So it's like we're all a part of these different components. I wouldn't even call them Lego blocks, because where are they going? I don't know. Is it like goo? Where, like that forgiving, like child's goo, where you just pick it up and it's just like you could just do whatever. You could throw it at the wall. I don't know. Like, we're a part of this goo, this plasma of interconnectedness that morphs and changes with each interaction. So, with language being a part of that system, it is subject to those same rules. To say that this conversation, I remember I posted a response at the end of doing a bit of Party in the USA. For whatever reason, that was the song that came out as appropriate for a response on Community. I think the hands up part, got my hands up playing my song. It's I'm sick of it. But then I'm like, am I sick of it? Or is there some opportunity for me to continue learning? Because clearly I just talked for a long time about it. And then I thought about it and I was a part of it. But I think there's a particular resistance within myself to have to deal with the current tension at the moment, right now. The reason why I don't watch the news, the reason why I'm like, I have a whole bunch of plants that I nourish. According to society, the reason why I'm single with a cat and a turtle. But, dealing with the now moments and insulating myself to a particular point has given me a different perspective. In my mind's eye, I see the hermit card because it's not like the hermit is in isolation. The lantern is there. The hermit is just going to the next step. And I feel like I experienced this tension with needing and feeling like I'm like, I just need to get to the fucking next step. I don't need this other shit. Or, it's just like I like so much noise. But then it's not. It's not. It's humanity. It's music. You don't like all music. And some music you like some days and not other days. And some moods you turn into and some moods you turn out of. It's all fitting particular energetic patterns if we really think about it. Condensing into particular pockets of experience, of what we might call experience. There is nothing that is 100% in some sort of foundational truth, not even our existence. We can get down to a quark, but that has not been observed. And so it's like if nothing is definite, even if we pattern out these value systems based off of how we organize our experiences in this socially constructed imaginary world, perhaps there is greater flexibility for us to adapt to new ways of thinking about what our value systems are around that word, more than feeling the resistance of other ecosystems that have different values from us. Unless, there's a conversation there that I'm avoiding, which is about harm that could go on forever. And it's like, unless there's a particular harm, right? Right. Physical threats, which a lot of people for some reason have a hard time understanding, or any other safety threat like psychological harm, so on and so forth. Like that, to me, should go without saying, but that's also my own bias that I be working through. Um, there are opportunities within that resistance, within that friction, within the ways that we disagree. What I'm saying right now, this whole spiel, I probably disagreed with 3 of my previous points as I'm talking myself through this. And then maybe in an hour, I'm going to think completely differently, even though I have very strong but loosely held opinions. They change as I process information. So I think that communities are very organic. And what I take from this conversation that I'm having with myself is that I offer that to others as well. I offer the experience of that flexibility, knowing that it is an energetic resonance and exchange or departure. Meaning, I gotta be around you, I don't have to be around you. But, if within our social contract we can agree to disagree and leave it at that, there's that. And if there's any circumstance where harm is involved, we can have that conversation. Or nuck if you buck. But we try not to get there, right? I think we got a lot of knucking and bucking and ready to fight everywhere around the globe right now. So I don't. I think we can chill out on that. I think we chill out on that. Ooh, I want a icy. Man. Anyway, I think that's all I wanted to say about community. I'm supposed to be working on a whole bunch of things, but I had to get this off my chest. Just like that tarot card.